In this video, the Jeep's not quite a roller, but it sure looks like it could be. Follow along, doing a lot of good stuff. Got a whole array of things to weld, things to cut off, things to weld, things to make. Just brackety type stuff to finish out the front axle, so let's give a time lapse a try here. Making my second gusset piece here, basically mirroring the other one. Put an 1.5-inch hole right in the middle. Sweet sounds of drill bits. And I like to flip it over and cut from the other side because then you don't end up with a side that's all pushed out. Tap magic, good stuff. Smells horrible. Nice clean hole, not blown out on either side. We'll clean all the tap magic off. Another busy night, grinding and welding. Let me give you a tour of what we did. Starting off over here. Up here used to be a mount for the drag link. I had this set up with a double-ended ram and a drag link for the TJ's old suspension configuration. That has changed. This was also a different steering configuration for a drag link before it went double-ended ram. But I'm not going to bother cutting that off because it'll look terrible if I cut it off. But the heims for the steering now are going to go on top of this knuckle. This is going to get a tube sleeve in here and then a big long bolt to hold it together. It's going to be nice. But cut this top bracket off, sanded that all smooth. Put some more weld on some brackets. Finish welding the front of the shock mount. So the next project's going to be making a cap for here and then making the back half of the shock mount. It'll follow that angle, but I got to get creative on how I want to do that. This was tonight's big win here. So this was the old ram skid that is hot as lava. Don't touch that. That I cut off when I replated this, because you could see these used to be down here. So with this new suspension configuration, I don't have a drag link to clear anymore. So I was able to move that up a bunch. And if you are Randy Slauson, you can just stick your ram up there and not put a skid plate there. And if you destroy it, you get another one. But I want to keep this thing alive as long as possible. So skid plate goes back on, but now the angle's a little bit different. And compared to the old setup, I can now get to all the bolts with an impact, which is nice. Not that you take the ram off much, but used to be it was tucked in pretty tight down here, and you had to get an Allen wrench in there, and it was time consuming to say the least. So the bottom of this will get welded back together. This is all 5/16, so it's extremely nice to weld. Set the welder on 1/4 inch. I always like to set that Vulcan welder a little bit colder than what I'm welding, and then it lets you run some nice patterns. Made this guy, rib going up the center, picks up the previous rib there, but now connects it all there. Drilled some holes for style to keep the theme there. And over here as well. Obviously this isn't cleaned up, but it actually all welded very nicely. I don't think I'm gonna put one over here because I'm already concerned about how hard it's gonna be to get the carrier out of this Dana 60. According to my calculations, it is exactly possible to get it out. The carrier in there should slot out just there, but it's possible when that day comes that I'd have to slice some of this off, which wouldn't be the end of the world. I can get in there, I got good access, but if I go and cap all this together, it's gonna be a real pain. I don't think there's gonna be enough force here to bend that up because I don't think a rock's gonna bend this 5/16. And we'll see how it goes. If I notice that this starts to tweak over time, then I'll plate it back in. I used to have a plate here that came up and then over and helped tie all this together. I don't think I need that anymore, so that's gonna stay alone or stay the way it is. Cardboard aided design, trace it out, fired up the old Arc Captain Super Blaster, which I should have done last night and saved some cutoff wheels, but not quite right yet. Ow. Always good when you have a hole in your glove and you work with hot stuff that helps you find it. But anyway, take my word for it. Fits pretty good up there, but it gets into the Johnny joint too much, so I'm gonna cut this face off about a 1/4 inch. And then, so here we have a bunch of weld washers stacked up. I have spacers somewhere that I cut to 1.5 inches for shocks, but this is like 1.6 inches, so it'll actually be really nice to set it up, get the shock in, and then everything will clamp down. This is just a regular tab I have, but it shows you the radius that matches here, and then I can make a paper stencil that basically brings this line to the edge of this. Don't touch that, it's hot as can be. And brings this one over here. For a little lunch break, arts and crafts. To start making the template for this rear shock mount, or the back half of the shock mount here. And you saw me use this cardboard the other night, but for precision, I prefer to use thinner cardboard like a cereal box, or in this case, Trader Joe's taco shells. So let's get drawing, and the better I can make the template, the better the part's gonna be. Came up with this. I left the corners a little long on each side, so I'll have a little bit of room to massage it how I want it, cut the bottom down if I need to, and things like that. But I think that's gonna get us real close. Looks nice and neat and tidy. So let's go put that on some steel and cut it out. Got a nice fit there. Just gonna knock a little off each corner so it lines up just right. Bolted in nice and tight here with my sandwich and welded it. All right, back part's welded on. Got some 1.5 inch flat bar. Actually need to weld a section there to the truss. That ties the two halves together. They look nice and neat, following the same radius. So I'll clean that up, finish welding it, and then we'll move on to fitting the other side. And I went ahead and put a weld washer on the back there, just for extra insurance. Basically, if the shock bolt gets loose, I don't want it wallow in the hole. Obviously, if you do that long enough, it'll wallow out anything, but this gives a nice shoulder for the bolt to be in and a little more insurance against that. Rookie move. Fitted this all up real nice, welded it in. Realized I was missing one weld washer. Oops. So this is 1.25 inches, that's not gonna work. Luckily, I can get a wheel in here. I'll cut that real nice without tearing anything up. Grind it all out and we'll try again. 5 minutes later, all better. No signs of distress. Gonna come in, fit my flat strap piece like we did on the other side. And wanted a stylish and effective way to tie these link mounts in. So cut them on kind of an angle from the bird's eye, brought them down into the suck down winch tab. I think looks pretty cool. Helps connect this plate to this plate and caps off the link mounts well enough. I also added the weld washer to this side. So now it's time to get the engine hoist out. Had a big section of my lights in the shop go out today. Don't know what that's about. It's not the bulbs, it seems to be the entire fixture. Let's worry about that later. Grabbing the engine hoist. Harbor Freight engine hoists, in my experience, the cylinders on them fail pretty quickly. This is the third cylinder on this hoist. But then dismounting a beadlock, I had the boom bend and fail. So I found this piece of pipe from a piece of old horse corral, and it works just fine. And I've attached to the front here because I wanted to lift the axle up on end so I can weld the underside of the brackets easier. That'll work. Use tip dip every so often, because this gun gets a little bit sticky as it gets hot. Gaps, but put them together. Rather miss spots here. Section hang in there. All right, that's not falling off. Back to lifting here. Strap on. So I don't like it being up here. I'm going to put a safety strap on. This is going to give me a good place to wire wheel, degrease, all kinds of stuff. So let's change the angle here and put it on time lapse, see what we can get up to. Looks pretty good. all in one color. This is gloss black, which my buddy Chuck turned me on to, because normally I hate gloss stuff. But it all gets dull the minute it gets dirt on it and you wash it and degrease it and stuff like that. So starting with a little bit of shine, I think it'll help it last a little longer. The shock mounts turned out nice and tidy. See how it goes. My experience painting things, I can do 1,000 coats and I still miss a bunch of spots, but from what I can see at least, it's looking good. Lighting through the iPhone camera looks a lot better than it does in real life. It's dark in here with my whole back row of lights burned out. Anyway, this is the apparatus I came up with. I put the ram on while it was up on the engine hoist. These are the wrong size bolts, don't have sleeves in them yet or anything, so more to be done on that, and I'll put a fresh coat of paint on them probably. But I came up with this engine hoist, dual furniture dollies, but the axle broke the engine or the furniture dolly in half pretty quickly. So now just more fighting with it. But I'm trying not to set it on the ground and just scratch it all across the garage floor. But could use 2 people, because then we could do it with floor jacks. Anyway, keep struggling. Sunday afternoon, turkeys are here to poop on everything. And I'm attempting to muscle some 4-link bars into this bad boy. Time to put the turkeys away. If you haven't cleaned up turkey poop, you don't understand why I keep chasing them out of the garage, but turkey poop sucks. So what we did here is pulled the top spring of the coilover out. You'll see the slider for the dual rate slider is locked out there. So this spring rate, theoretically, I can use. It's a 300-pound spring, and you can measure how much it compresses to hold the car up, and that'll tell you what your sprung corner weight is. Right now, it's not holding the car on the spring. It's just kind of snugged there, and my assembly of sketchy blocks is holding it. That's because I don't want to lift the front of the car up and have it fall off the back and do anything crazy, but it feels pretty cool to have that in there. That's pretty rad. So these 2 wood blocks are what I was using as the simulated full compressed height of the bump stop, because part of it sticks out of the cup. Then there's the actual pad and the base of it. So from right here, what we're looking at the car is right under 6 inches of up travel. So ride height's gonna be probably 2 inches taller than that. If I could sit at 8 up, that would be pretty rad. And for reference, our link is very nearly dead flat there. So coming down an inch or 2, let's see what that angle looks like. I'll put the angle finder on it. So sitting with 6 inches of up travel, that link is exactly flat. So bringing it down just a couple inches, that link should be, I don't know, maybe 5 degrees down. I'm happy with that. I think we might be at the point where I need to roll the tire over here, because it's gonna look pretty crazy with how much that tire sticks out the front. So of tonight's festivities, no, I have not fixed my lighting situation. I'll get to that someday. Out of these AutoFab hood pin scuff guards. Obviously I should have done this years ago, but I didn't, but I'm happy with them. They're soft, so when I put the rivets in, it really squishes them. I don't know if they'll hold up well. I feel like they need to be a harder plastic, but we'll see what happens. Hood goes up and down real nice. And then now that this headlight is in, I put this in earlier, I need to readjust the mount, the rod here, how it connects, because it used to be the bolt that was hanging up that off-road light. But I'm thinking it's gonna be factory headlights and then one big off-road light here, one bin there, And then up top is going to get my big Light Force light rack. But what I've been doing tonight, pulled the tie rods off. They're getting some fresh paint. This Krylon Tough Coat Red that I got on clearance for dirt cheap. It's like the best paint I've ever had. And here, I have made the tube sleeve. Fits real nicely over the 1 3/4. And I happen to have that bolt that was the right length. I'll need to go in for the other side, but I have one as a placeholder for now. So I got that other sleeve painted somewhere, and then we're gonna work on putting it in over there. Some new parts here. This is an ignition switch, GM style, allegedly, according to the description. 2 keys. It has a auxiliary ignition and on, or accessory ignition on. So this is pretty cool. I'm gonna figure out where I want to put it. I'm thinking it's probably gonna go in this space here, but I'm figuring out my layout there because I also have our brake bias, and this is a manual ball valve line lock that I'm gonna put on the front circuit. So both of those, and then also on the front circuit is gonna go this. This is a brake switch driven by brake pressure. So if you have pressure on there, puts out an electrical signal that I can tie into brake lights. What I need to do tonight is figure out all the adapter fittings that I need to make all these things go together. And then I'll probably make this panel and start figuring out if I can lay it out to where I can fit all this stuff I want and my trans temp gauge. See what we can do. Got a little dash plate here, fits real nice. Got 2 of my threaded trick tabs from Rough Stuff there. I'm gonna need to order more of those. Rough Stuff lead times have gotten really bad, so I try not to order from them anymore, but these are nice, and I need a few of them to do the door on the other side to match this. After that, I don't know what I'll use these little ones for. Got a bunch of the big ones for the skid plates. But anyway, that's another story. Back here, I've traced the available room, and I'm gonna take this out and see what I can fit where. Tonight's progress. Line lock. Here we have the horn button. Bing, bing. Just a momentary big dumb button that you can't mess up. I didn't like the horn in my Jeep before. It long since was not the steering wheel horn. But this gives me, if I'm really jamming and just want to bang that, which most of the time is just to harass your buddies on the trail. Great. Here's my ignition switch. That's ignition, starter, or I can turn it back to just accessory. Not sure what I'll wire to that, but it might be interesting to put like rock lights on it or something. I don't know. But nice positive click. This thing's pretty cheap, so I'll probably need to get another one and put it in the car just in case this Chinesium doesn't work very well. Over here, we have the trans temp gauge mounted. I thought about doing something a little more fancy on this, but frankly, it came with the bracket. The bracket's gonna fit very nicely. This is clocked to where from the driver's seat, I can see the needle straight up is 200 degrees. And then if it starts getting hot, it gets real easy for me to see the sweep over there. So that's where I want it. And then this guy is gonna fit really nicely right next to it. And again, this is gonna have everything else. This will have RPM, it'll have RPM, water temp, oil pressure, all the goodies. And we'll configure that however we want. And again, passenger and driver can see it clearly. Only thing that's not going to be is a speedometer. So I eventually will get a GPS speedometer and put it in here, but for initial trail / race car duties, I don't really care what the speed is. That might even just end up being my phone because I have a GPS speed app on the phone. Picked up this little pedestal mount. It took quite a bit of work to figure out what I could do in my press brake, and then bending the angles a little bit more and hammering to straighten things out, and then hit it with the DA ultimately to clean it up. But I think it's gonna fit real nice right there and give me something to mount this to. So, from vision to reality. Hole in the back, the plug's coming through there. The computer has 3 of those little like rubber chair scuff guard dots on it just to help isolate it a little bit. And then the back is stuck on with a bunch of 3M double stick adhesive, which is super strong, but just for some extra insurance, I ran 2 zip ties here on the outside, real nice and clean. They don't block any view. You don't even really know they're there. That's just a little extra shake proofing because this thing is gonna get shaken up. Sometimes you make mistakes. I've made a few this week on the car. First of all, I spent last night measuring this out real nice, and I liked the idea of mounting this light on this upright so that I didn't have to put anything in the tube. So if I wanted to build off of that tube, if I wanted to put a sway bar in it someday, etc., etc., it was just nice and clean. I know the winch mount's nice and even. Did a great job with it until, let's see if I can get you in there. The plug sticks right into the grill. How did I not see that coming? So now I have put a hole in a thing that I can't use. Pretty bummed about that. I was out here last night and had a moment of panic looking at the car, thinking the bump stop can is gonna get into the coilover. And I went down the 7 stages of grief. And today I decided I was gonna come out here, cut the bump stops off, figure it out. You know, I was only gonna be 1/4 inch off, you know, I would think for the room I needed, but as I'm cycling it, it doesn't look like it hits because the coilovers get wider as they come up, and they just kind of come up here, so it looked like I had like 3/8 of an inch of room there. Obviously it's not fitting a 3/0 coilover like that, but I think it's gonna be okay. But it made me realize that since I put the link bars back in, I had not aligned the car again, so one side could be quite a bit longer, which it actually was, and make it worse there and better on the other side. So I was getting too carried away without doing a good alignment. So I've got a plumb bob string going off my center line mark of the chassis there. Coming down here to the axle, verified that that is centered. And basically I made the lower link bars the exact same length. And then I'm using the uppers to set the side to side. And I have the car sitting at approximate ride height so that I can also set the caster as I'm doing all this. So a lot of fiddling, a lot of measuring tape, a lot of back and forth work, but this system's working. Setting caster, I like this manual gauge more than I like the digital one, because the digital one, if it's crooked, it'll still give you a reading. This one, if you're not holding it up and down, the needle will stick. So if it's free moving, then you know you're all right. So right now at ride height, we're at about 6 degrees. I want 7 or 8. So that gives me the choice to shorten the upper bars or lengthen the lower bars. I think I'm gonna lengthen the lowers ever so slightly, get this whole thing aligned, then I'm gonna cycle it back up and make sure I've got room off the bump stop can. So lots to do, but it's coming along. I'm avoiding dealing with the bump stop situation, but I worked on getting the front end aligned, which it is. And now I'm just taking a break and heading over to a light mount that's actually gonna work. And I use this square, clamped my tabs at the same spacing, and now all I have to do is get my side to side right, but the angle of the tabs is going to be just where it needs to be. So I'm happy about that. Come on over and put a tab. Front axle has been aligned. Caster set to 7 degrees. The bump stop cup does not hit the coilover. It's close, but it clears. So no, that's a big relief. This is ride height. This is where it'll sit with the tire aired up, of course. It's about what belly height's gonna be. And the front links, the lowers are at 5 degrees down. So very nearly flat, I'm happy with that. Uppers are, 1 degree down. That's cool. And the rear is actually gonna get lowered just a tickle because it's sitting at a true 20 degrees up, which is not how it would actually fit in the car. But let's see what these lower link angles are. 4 degrees on the lowers. So once that lowers, I think we're gonna be, once that's actually down, it just needs to go down about an inch. We're gonna be 5 degrees link angle on both the front and rear lower links, and then right about 0 on the uppers. And that's because there's more separation on the axle end than there is at the chassis end, but just barely. So the anti-squat number on this setup is really low, and the anti-dive number is really low. So hopefully that lets the shocks work and doesn't bind up the bars. Finally decided I had enough support on these upper shock mounts. They're not fully welded to the crossbar there. just in case something's catastrophically wrong, I could move it up or move it down or start from scratch. But both of these shocks, the coilover, similar to how we did in the front, removed the upper spring, moved the lockout collars up, and fiddled around with putting those in there. I should have put shims in those shock mounts to make them wider. They're very tight, very difficult to get in there, but I can go in with some all thread and open them up just a little bit, and that'll be all right. But just for fun, let's get a measure of what the travel looks like on this bad boy. The droop's insane. That's essentially, the belly's about at where ride height is, and that's the rotor sitting on the ground, or just about a 1/4 inch off. Here we are, full compression. Again, like the front shocks, the rears also have rubber shaft bumpers, but the bump stops are set up to where they're never going to be able to push through those and actually truly bottom out the shock. But this is 21.5 inches of travel. So when I do limit straps, I'll probably take 1 inch of that out, just so that there's room for as the strap stretches out, which they do. I'm never fully extending the shock. But that means I'm going to cycle a real clean 20.5 inches of travel back here, maybe even 21 if I set the limit straps just right. That should be pretty cool. Look how high that tucks up there. Top of the diff, well up above the gas tank, which is kind of cool. And highlights why one of the big reasons I built this upper triangulated 4-link is I can get that gas tank so much lower than most cars will have it. Most of them will have them up, you know, a foot or so, so they're on top of the whole rear diff. All about that center of gravity. I think we're gonna end this video here, looking at some good suspension shots. A vehicle with 4 attachment points to the ground, slightly less dangerous. But at this point, I'm gonna pull the seats out, I'm gonna pull the doghouse out, I'm gonna pull all the floor out and work on mounting the drive shaft carrier bearing down there. I might rework the exhaust. I don't like how close it is underneath the floor on the passenger side. And lots of other fun and exciting things to do.